You might get into work today and someone says, we're going through restructuring. And you think, oh, please, no. And then someone, oh, by the way, we have AI as well. And then, anything else? Oh, yeah, we have this beautiful new innovation project which you're going to take on. Okay, great. And you think, didn't we have enough of disruption? We have someone who has a very different take on that. Disrupt everything and win, take control of your future. Hello and welcome, Dr. Patrick Leddin.
Thank you so much for having me, Niels. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much for taking the time. You wrote this book together with James Patterson. I have the first question. How did this happen? Because I know that it's a very well discussed topic. Many people have a take on it. And how did it happen that you get to this great corporation together?
Yeah, so I was teaching a class at Vanderbilt University. For the last 12 years, I've been a professor there here in Nashville, Tennessee, in the US. And one of the classes I was teaching was a class called Leading Business Through Times of Crisis. And we would do one section of that class, Niels, where we would have guest speakers come and talk. Really, pretty interesting conversations. We'd have the
Yeah.
CEO of American Airlines would come in to 20 and sit in front of 25 students and talk about dealing with crises. And one particular guest speaker we had was James Patterson. And James Patterson has a master's degree from Vanderbilt University in English literature. And he started talking to the students by asking them a simple question. He said, "Are you living a good life?" And he basically said it's a simple question, but the answer is not simplistic. You have to really think it through. Or do you feel like you're on one treadmill, only to get on another treadmill, only to get
Hmm.
on another treadmill, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, I'm living a good life, and I want to share with you how I did it. And he called the presentation that day, The Power of Disruption. And many people don't know this, but he was once the CEO of J. Walter Thompson, the big advertising agency, and also the president of Hill and Knowlton, the public relations firm. And he quit all of that to focus on writing. And then he disrupted everything in publishing for sure,
Yeah.
multiple books a year, multiple authors, et cetera. And by the time it was over, I was like, I want to do something with him on that, which turned into a 3-year study sponsored by the university, trying to figure out how people looked at all those disruptions you listed, Niels, as something positive that they can do something positive with.
Excellent, because I saw in your book there are 27 positive disruptor moves one can make at their job. Let's face it, many people say as soon as I go to my job and they say there is no news, many people say no news are good news. I couldn't even think of two positive disruptor moves, not even speaking about 27 of them. So first, of course, how did you find them out? And can you give us in like a preview of some of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So how we found them out was over the course of the 3 years in the research, we had a chance to sit down and do long form interviews with 350 people, get their stories, kind of go through them and code them and say, okay, what are some of the similarities, what comes out? And from that, we found a basic process that people follow. We also found some key behaviors. And then we identified these little positive disruptor moves. And the idea behind these positive disruptor moves are instead of feeling like I have to change everything or blow up everything I'm doing or whatever it might be no, just try this little move. For example, say the scary yes. When you have an opportunity come before you and you feel part of you says do it, but the butterflies in your stomach are saying don't, just do it and see what might
Hmm.
happen. Or before you get out of bed every day, just own the day. Say to yourself, here's what I'm going to do today or what I'm going to accomplish, or remind yourself of kind of how you see your purpose in life or what role you want to take on instead of just immediately picking up your phone and going into the throes of whatever that has ready for you. Actually choose to own the day. So there are little moves like that that can kind of reset your mind and help you remember, like, why am I here? What am I trying to do? Because the way we look at it is every disruption that comes along is an opportunity to either smother the fire inside you or
Hmm.
throw fuel on that fire. And we want people to say, I want to throw fuel on that fire. Now, we're not saying every disruption is wonderful, Niels. There's some you would not wish on your worst enemy. But many times in the face of disruption, there is fertile ground for something cool to happen.
Excellent. And that's a very good hook of what I wanted to get into. When now people say, hey, we have this disruption, but it probably means, let's say someone says, okay, I'm working in logistics and we have AI coming in. And suddenly everyone in my department is scared. Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to find a new job? I don't even know if my job is going to exist in several years. So I read a lot of things, but maybe I think they are not all right because some people tell me AI is not going to replace my job, but I heard that way too often in my life. How can I turn this in any angle? How can I find any positive angle in this when anyone is just scared? And AI, I think, is a very present topic at the moment where people say it is a disruptor, but for many in a rather scary than rather more productive way. What is your take on that?
Yeah, and I think that the fears or concerns or frustrations or whatever they might be, they're real and people are feeling them. And I'm not saying don't feel those. What I'm saying is that when you are dealing with disruptions like AI, for example, there's so many things you don't know. Patterson and I were on a TV show, kind of a global, or excuse me, a national cable news show here in the US. And he said at the very beginning when they started talking about AI, he's like, anybody who comes and tells you what AI is going to do is full of baloney. No, nobody knows exactly what it's going to do. But
Hmm.
it's going to change things. There's no doubt about it. And we have a choice individually. We either fear it and try to act like it's not even happening or avoid it or believe like it's just blowing things up, or we can confront it directly and say, okay, here's what's happening. What can I do about it? Because for the most part, there's so many things you can't do about it. I was talking to somebody not that long ago who had this very concern. He and I were working together on a project, and he said to me, Patrick, I am concerned because I do a lot of writing at my company. I write copy for them, I write speeches that the CEO gives. And the other day, the CEO gave a speech that ChatGPT produced.
There you are.
And, is my job gone? What's going to happen? And I said, well, do you envision a world where you could actually be more valuable to your company, even with AI existing? And he thought about it. He goes, yeah, I think I could. And I said, okay, what role would you take on? Because in the book, we talk about these different roles. What role would you take on? And he said, I think I need to be a trailblazer. I think I need to lead out on this thing and become the guy who knows a lot about AI. And then I'll be what we call a torchbearer. I'll go and teach other people and create a movement toward it. The point being is that it went from him saying AI is going to get me, or I hope my retirement is getting close enough that I won't have to worry about AI,
Yeah.
to saying, you know what, I could do something about this. And we all have the choice in every moment to choose which action we're going to take. At least in that moment, he said, I'm going to take action where I'm going to put the, as we would say in the US with baseball, I'm going to put the bat in my hand and I'm
Yeah.
going to step into the plate.
Excellent. When you now say, okay, people can step up to the plate to stick to a baseball
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
thing here. And some people say, look, I see this uncertainty, I see this change, and I just don't find the confidence, especially not when I'm leading a department. I feel a bit like I'm faking the confidence towards my people that everything is going to turn out well. How do I find true confidence when the disruptor for anyone is rather a threat, or it is at least perceived as a threat? Where do I find the confidence?
Yeah, that's a great question because that's true. I mean, if you stand in front of your team of people, whatever size team that might be, and you're faking the confidence, you know it, and quite frankly, they kind of know it too.
Yeah.
I think a better way to possibly approach that is to share with your team that you're not sure, but you want to find a way together to deal with this. Because I have found, Niels, that I was a lieutenant in the Army, so I had a platoon years ago, and I owned my own company for about 12 years, and then I ran a department at the university. So I've had my time standing in front of teams as the leader, and I've had times where I'm not quite sure what's going to happen.
I
And
think
if
you also were part of a business which was acquired. I think you went
yeah,
from the army where you completed quite a number of trainings to KPMG and then to another company. And that company suddenly in 2012, when I read your CV right, was acquired.
yeah, I sold that
And you
business.
never know how this ends for you.
Yeah, exactly. So that was an interesting one. How are you going to exit? Point being is, in all those situations, you're not sure. You're not completely sure. You might have some hunches about how things are going to play out. I found when I stand in front of my team members and I say, here's what I know and here's what I don't know, but here's what my intent is and here's where I want to go and here's where I need your help. It's amazing how much they actually root for you. They want to see you win. And one thing we found in the research on this is there's these 16 behaviors that positive disruptors can take on. There's no perfect combination and nobody had them all. So it wasn't like if you have number 1, 7, and 10, you're going to be great at this. And if you don't, you're not in a good shape at all. What it was some people had 1, 7, and 10, and other people had 2, 8, and 9. And the point being is all different kinds of combinations came up with amazing things. But the best leaders tend to know what they're good at and then figure out what their team members are good at. And I'll give you an example, as I'll just run through a few of the behaviors in the book. So one is the ability to cast a vision, to say, here's where we can go. Here's what this
Yeah.
disruption, it might be changing things, but here's the opportunity within it. Other people can look at the brutal reality and say, yeah, that's interesting, but look where we stand right now. Those are two different behaviors. Some are good at both, some not so much. I mean, if I was really good at one, like casting a vision, but really bad at looking at the brutal reality, I might create visions that are completely
Out
unrealistic.
of touch with
Right.
reality. Yeah.
Right. Another one might be the ability to listen to understand. Some people are better at listening. Some people are just not. They pretend or they ignore or whatever they
Hmm.
might do. Some people are really good at rolling their sleeves up and going, okay, let's just give this a shot. We call it getting their hands dirty. So there's these 16 different behaviors. You start to realize I'm good at a few of these. Other people are good at other ones together, which is why we have a team in the first place. The best teams are the ones that my strengths overcompensate for your weaknesses and vice versa. In other words, my weaknesses become irrelevant because of your strengths. So how do we work together? So I think in those moments where you say, I'm going to step in front of my team and I'm not sure, it's okay to step in front of your team and say, hey, I know there's a lot going on. Here's the reality of it. I'm not sure how it's going to play out completely, but my intent is for us to figure out how to win. And here's what I'm going to bring to the table. And I know some of the strengths you all are going to bring to the table, and we can figure this out best together.
Excellent. So we can step away a bit from the picture of some people need to think of themselves as superhumans, that I have to be great at every single one of them. It's perfectly okay to say, hey, I have a couple of these traits, but probably not all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think historically, at some point, there was probably some organizational structure where at the top there was one person in this big pyramid of people below them. And if something went wrong, everybody looked to the pharaoh or the king or whoever it might be.
Exactly.
What do we do? And then we kind of decentralized leadership and we said, okay, that leader is going to kind of make other people leaders. And then everybody still would look to those leaders. And then we've gone through this phase where we're like, well, we'll empower you, whatever that might mean. And that means I'll give you the skills and you can kind of run autonomously, which works to a certain extent until disruption shows up. And when disruption shows up, we don't want everybody looking at the leader saying, okay, boss, what can we do? We want everybody to look at the purpose of the team and the values of the team and say, okay, what's the best choice I can make right now? And really that starts to decentralize decision-making and risk-taking in the face of disruption.
Excellent. When now disruption shows up and some people tell you, okay, I read your book and I see all of these points. Perfect. However, I am based on certain aspects. On the one hand, I want to have resilience in my team. On the other hand, I am just probably I probably rated based on numbers, which means I have to get performance done. I have to get results on the table. So my team has to deliver while we face disruption at the same time. So how can I say, let's be resilient, but at the same time, we have to massively perform and deliver results while we do not know how this disruptor is going to turn out for us?
Yeah, that's the challenge of every leader. We have to deal with the tension
Exactly.
between two things, right? Should I lean in and be more what people would say micromanaging, but make sure I stay on top of something? Should I back up and let my people develop? These tensions are constantly going on. Am I your friend or am I your boss? Or, all these type of tensions that people listening to this have to navigate. And the one you just mentioned is true. I have to deliver results today, but at the same time, I have to build the capacity to deliver results in the future. And if I focus too much on one, it comes at the detriment of the other. So how do you build resilience? Well, you don't build resilience by saying, get in the room and study it for 2 hours and come out and you're more resilient. You build resilience by trying things and falling down and learning what you can handle and getting over obstacles. And then the next time you can get over higher obstacles and then higher obstacles. That's how you build resilience. That's why when somebody joins your team and everything to them might seem overwhelming, but if you've been there 10 years, you're like, no, this is no big deal. We've dealt with this before. So what you have to figure out is, how do I, as a leader, make sure that we're still performing on the things that matter? And at the same time, we're also setting goals that are a little bit about transforming. So I think it's really good to think about in your team, what are all our goals we're working on? Which ones are performing, delivering results today? And which ones are the ones that are going to allow us to transform into something else? And sometimes you can't take on very many transformative type of goals because you better perform right now. And some leaders get this wrong because they think, oh, I need to go do the big thing. And in doing so, they realize that they missed a chance to deliver on what they were hired to do. And other leaders don't do a very good job on looking to the future and what's going to happen, and they're not preparing your team. That guy I mentioned, Doug Parker from American Airlines, he said a quote in our class one time that just stuck with me. He said, a crisis is never the time to start making introductions.
Mm-hmm.
And what the saying is, you don't wait for the crisis to happen to suddenly get your act together or make the friends that you're going to need or colleagues you're going to need to be successful. You have to be doing both. But that's why we get paid the big money and have the great opportunities, is to figure out, what can my team handle? Can I push them a little bit in some new areas that's going to cause them to stretch? And at the same time, not risk the delivering what we need to deliver today. And I really think that's a conversation you need to have kind of between your own two ears, also with your boss and also with your team members, saying, okay, things are going to change. We need to be preparing for the future, but at the same time, we need to make sure we're delivering on today. And I would say every team needs to have that conversation, but the answer is going to always be different based upon the pressure and the situation and the experience and everything else they have going on.
Excellent. One last question. If now someone is listening to this and say, okay, I get all of these points. However, when I have this massive disruption and I'm probably not the CEO of a company, where do I actually start? Suddenly, I'm a bit unsure about the future, but I think it's going to figure out for me. My team is massively insecure about anything, and I don't know if anything is going to turn out too well for them. At the same time, I'm somewhere in the middle of a project which I have to perform on, I'm getting probably rated and scored on the KPIs. And at the same time, people get to me and want definite answers with 100% guaranteed correct answers. And I don't even know the answers right now. So where do I get started when I have all of that happening? Where do I get started in these moments? What is the step one, two, three, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's a great question. And let me say this really quickly too. When we talk about disrupting everything, that doesn't mean changing everything. Sometimes the most disruptive thing you can do is actually go towards stability when everybody else is going toward change. If you were when you were a little kid
Very
and
good point.
all your friends said, "Oh, let's go do this," and you're like, "I don't think we're supposed to do that." You say no to that thing, and all your friends look at you like, "Come on!" But that's a disruptive decision, and we want people to recognize that they're going to make some decisions that are going to be very much like move toward a change, and other ones that are going to say, in the face of change, we're going to say no. And we want to give them the kind of recognize they have the freedom to do both. Now, as far as like where do we start? So when Patterson and I were writing the book, we also thought, well, we want to get a company out there that can help us create a training program around this because we think that's how you get in more people's hands. And we approached a number of companies, but we ultimately chose the company Franklin Covey because Stephen Covey wrote Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. And it's a very successful company in developing teams. So they created a course based on the concepts of the book called Innovate for Impact. And the idea behind it, which really ties back to one of the central teachings of Franklin Covey, is this idea that in the world, you have your circle of influence and you have your circle of concern. And the circle of concern, folks, are all those things that kind of keep you up at night or stress you out, but you can't do anything about. The circle of influence is the things you can do something about. So I would say, first of all, you got to work within your circle of influence. And within my circle of influence with my team, if a disruption comes along, I can say to them, hey, with this disruption happening, we're changing something, some technology's coming in, we're getting a new product line into our manufacturing facility, the customers are asking for this, the list goes on and on. First thing is, what's our vision? What could happen with that thing? And they can start helping you think through, well, the vision could be we could actually achieve this, or that process we hated, we can stop doing that, or whatever it might
Hmm.
be. And then say to them, so that's step one. What's the vision? What could we do with this? Step two is, what are all the obstacles that are going to get in our way? What are they? Let's write them all down now because we know they're out there. Let's start thinking through them. We can't think of all of them. Some are going to surprise us, but let's think through some of the ones we know from our own experience. And then for each obstacle, what are we going to do when it shows up? Are we going to just accept it and move forward? Are we going to try to reduce it, mitigate it? Are we going to try to remove it? What are we going to do? So if that obstacle happens, what are we going to do? That's the second step. And then the third step is, okay, let's design an experiment. What's something we can test right now in our own world that if it doesn't go well, doesn't blow everything up, will we learn something? What's our hypothesis and how can we test it rapidly? And if you do those three steps, you start to realize this big disruption that's out there, we can paint a vision for it. We can think through the obstacles and we can start running some plays and seeing what happens. And really, when you talk about resilience, that's how the team starts to become resilient on their own. So here's one thing I hear, Niels, a lot, and you probably hear this too when you're talking to executives. They're talking about transforming their organization. I want my organization to take that new mountain and climb to the top of that new mountain, become a completely different business to survive 10 years from now. And then they look over their shoulder at their team and they go, do I have the leaders and the culture to get there? I got this great strategy, but do I have the team? I think one way you build the team is you start getting leaders and teams to recognize disruption, to come up with a vision for it, to come up with the obstacles, and to run some little plays. And if you can get everybody testing experiments throughout your organization, that means you as the leader don't have to drag your team to the top of the mountain or let go of half your people to hire new people with different skills. You can start building that capability now.
I think these are the perfect final words. However, one more question do I have. And now people listen to this and say, I think we should have Patrick over in our company and they want to get in touch with you. How can they get in touch with you? How can they get
Oh,
in touch
yeah.
with you?
Yeah. I mean, you can find me anywhere. Just go to patrickleddin.com. It's PatrickLeddin.com. It's nice to only be the only one out there with the name Patrick Leddin. Makes it easy. But yeah, go out there or just go on LinkedIn. I put out a newsletter every week and just start checking it out. No cost. And you can see what's going on.
Perfect. These are the perfect final words. Disrupt everything and win. Take control of your future. Dr. Patrick Leddin, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Niels. Thank you, everyone.